A city can have crowded streets, thousands of homes, and people depending on the same water supply every morning. But at Mohenjo-daro, archaeologists found the streets, the homes, the wells, and the drains, without finding the palace that supposedly controlled them all. So who was in charge? In the 1920s, archaeologists working near the Indus River began uncovering a city buried beneath the soil of what is now Pakistan. The ruins did not appear all at once. Brick walls emerged first, then straight streets, then rooms, wells, staircases, and narrow channels running beside the buildings. The site was Mohenjo-daro. At one point, archaeologists reached a large sunken structure lined with carefully fitted bricks. Steps descended into a tank. The walls had been sealed against leaking water. Around it stood rooms and passages that suggested people entered, moved through, and gathered near the basin. This was not the throne room they had expected to find. Nearby, ordinary houses showed their own signs of planning. Some had private bathing spaces. Some had access to wells. Wastewater could move through small channels toward larger drains along the streets. In places, the drains were covered with removable bricks, so someone could get below them to clear blockages. That detail changes the feeling of the ruins. Mohenjo-daro was not simply a cluster of houses that happened to grow beside a river. Someone had decided where streets should run, how large bricks should be, where water could be collected, and how dirty water should leave the neighborhood. Yet the more the city revealed, the less familiar its power structure became. There was no confirmed palace dominating the center, no unmistakable royal cemetery filled with treasure, no long inscription naming a king who had conquered enemies and ordered the city into existence. Instead, the excavators found a city that looked organized without displaying the person who supposedly organized it. Around 4,500 years ago, perhaps tens of thousands of people lived here. The exact population is debated, but an estimate near 40,000 is often used. And this is the mystery. How did a city that size function when archaeologists cannot point to a palace, a king, or a readable royal archive? The first clue is hidden in the bricks. Across major Indus settlements, bricks were often made in a familiar proportion: 1 part thick, 2 parts wide, and 4 parts long. The measurements were not identical in every brick, but the basic pattern was remarkably consistent. That sounds small until you think about what it requires. Clay has to be prepared. Molds have to be made. Kilns have to be supplied. Builders in separate neighborhoods have to follow the same basic rules. A shared building standard lets walls, drains, platforms, and repairs fit together without every worker inventing a new system. The same principle appears in the streets. At Mohenjo-daro, large sections were laid out on a grid. Streets crossed at planned angles. Houses often opened onto lanes, rather than presenting grand facades toward a central royal avenue. Different areas seem to have served different purposes, including raised sections and lower residential zones. Water was built into daily life. Wells were placed inside or near groups of houses. Bathing platforms were common. Floors were sometimes sloped so water could run away instead of pooling inside a room. Then came the drains. A household channel could carry used water toward a larger street drain. The larger drain could be covered. Inspection openings allowed maintenance. This was not modern sewage treatment, and it did not make the city hygienic by today's standards. But it shows that water movement was being managed as a public problem. One family's wastewater could become another family's street problem. The city's builders understood that connection. The Great Bath is the most famous example. Its brick tank was carefully constructed, waterproofed, and surrounded by rooms. We do not know exactly what happened there. It may have been used for ritual bathing, public gatherings, or some practice that has disappeared from memory. Calling it a swimming pool would be too simple. Calling it a temple would also go beyond the evidence. What we can say is that the structure required planning, labor, materials, and continued care. It was a shared installation, not just a private bathroom inside a wealthy house. Now compare this city with the places archaeologists usually use to explain ancient power. In Mesopotamia, rulers left inscriptions describing victories, building projects, and their relationships with the gods. In Egypt, royal tombs and monuments carried the names of pharaohs across stone walls. The message was direct. This person ruled. This person built. This person wanted to be remembered. Mohenjo-daro offers a different kind of evidence. Its people left behind seals, pottery marks, tablets, tools, ornaments, and thousands of symbols. But the symbols have not been securely read. Many inscriptions are very short. A sign may appear on a seal, a ceramic object, or a small piece of material, but we cannot translate a sentence that says, "This palace belongs to King whoever." The civilization speaks constantly, yet never in a voice we can understand. That is why the usual explanation for a city this large becomes difficult. Large populations need food brought in from surrounding farms. Builders need instructions. Wells and drains need upkeep. Goods need to move through workshops and markets. Rules must exist somewhere, even if they are never carved in stone. In a kingdom with a visible palace, we can imagine the chain. A ruler gives orders. Officials measure grain. Workers build walls. Guards protect storehouses. Priests bless the arrangement. But Mohenjo-daro does not hand us that chain. It gives us the result. The city may have been governed by a king whose palace has not survived, or whose residence has not been recognized. Important buildings can be mistaken for ordinary ones when their inscriptions are unreadable. Floods, rebuilding, erosion, and later digging can erase the parts that once carried political meaning. But the missing palace is not the only issue. Across the wider Indus world, archaeologists have found few structures that clearly function as royal monuments. Wealth exists, but it is not concentrated in the obvious way seen in some other ancient civilizations. There are no confirmed royal tombs packed with the unmistakable display of one dynasty's power. So perhaps authority worked differently. Consider a resident moving through Mohenjo-daro early in the day. This person steps out of a brick house, passes a bathing platform, and walks toward a nearby well. A drain runs beside the lane, partly hidden beneath flat covers. The same brick sizes appear in the wall ahead and in the edge of the street. We do not know this resident's name. We do not know whether the person was a merchant, craft worker, farmer, servant, or official. But the setting tells us something. Daily life depended on systems that crossed household boundaries. The well had to be dug and maintained. The drain had to be cleared. Streets had to remain usable. Bricks had to be produced to familiar standards. Food and raw materials had to arrive from outside the city. No single house could accomplish all of that alone. This is the deeper mechanism. Order can be stored in routines, measurements, shared customs, and local cooperation. It does not have to appear as a giant statue of a ruler. A city can coordinate people through institutions spread across neighborhoods instead of concentrated in one royal compound. Archaeologists sometimes describe this possibility as decentralized urbanism, a city governed through several groups or local institutions rather than one clearly visible monarch. At Mohenjo-daro, that idea cannot be proven because the political records cannot be read. Standardization is visible. The government behind it is not. A second example appears at Dholavira, another major Indus settlement on the island of Kadir in the salt desert of western India. There, builders created large reservoirs to catch and store water in a region where seasonal rain could be unreliable. The city was divided into carefully planned zones. Stonework, gateways, channels, and storage areas followed a design that required cooperation over years. Water was not simply pulled from a river beside the walls. It had to be collected, guided, stored, and rationed through the city. A person living there would feel the political system through the water system. When rain came, channels directed it toward reservoirs. When the dry season arrived, access to those reservoirs became a matter of survival. Whoever managed the system held power, whether that power belonged to a king, a council, neighborhood leaders, or several groups sharing authority. The buildings show coordination. They do not tell us the title of the coordinator. The same puzzle appears at Harappa, the site that gave the civilization its older name. Harappa had planned streets, craft areas, large platforms, and evidence of long-distance exchange. Its people worked with standardized materials and shared urban habits across a huge region. Yet the seals found across these settlements do not give historians a readable political story. The signs may record names, offices, goods, religious ideas, or something else entirely. We cannot even be certain that every sign sequence represents a full writing system in the same way Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform did. Here's the strange part. The missing king may be the most misleading clue of all. If a palace collapses, archaeologists can miss it. If a royal archive was written on perishable material, it can vanish. If political power was divided among councils, merchant groups, priests, administrators, or local households, then there may never have been one grand building to find. And the absence of royal monuments does not prove that Mohenjo-daro was peaceful, equal, or free of hierarchy. Some homes were larger than others. Craft production and trade required control of resources. The city may have contained powerful families whose authority was expressed through access, land, labor, or ritual, rather than colossal statues. A clean drain does not mean a fair society. That is the twist. The same infrastructure that makes Mohenjo-daro look surprisingly modern can also hide the people who controlled it. A covered sewer tells us that maintenance mattered. It does not tell us who could order a repair, who paid for it, or who was allowed to use the best water. Even now, a city can have uniform pipes, building codes, public treatment plants, and numbered roads without making its decision-makers visible in every street. The system is obvious. The signatures of power are often not. Mohenjo-daro leaves us with an unusual kind of archaeological silence. Its people standardized bricks, but not their explanation. They engineered water, but did not leave us a readable account of who supervised it. They built a city large enough to demand coordination, then concealed the shape of that coordination behind symbols we still cannot read. Perhaps the answer is waiting in one undisturbed room, beneath a flood layer, on a tablet no one has found. Or perhaps there was never a single ruler to name. The missing palace may not mean that nobody ruled Mohenjo-daro. It may mean power was built into the streets, the standards, and the systems that made the palace unnecessary. At Mohenjo-daro, the city itself may be the monument to whoever was in charge.